Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. Laguna Monterey Water District, notice of a regular board meeting of the Board of the District to be held at 105 Port Road, Port Isabel, Texas, on the 25th day of October 2017 at the hour of 5:30 p.m. for consideration of the business of the agenda below. This notice is posted at the office of the district on October 19th, 2017 at 2 p.m. in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551-041-551-050, not less than 72 hours prior to the time of the said meeting. We have the presence of a quorum. All the board members are present at this time. I may please have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I'll give the invocation. Yeah, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, please bless us this day and let us just take a moment to enjoy this, this environment that you give to us, and let us have a pleasant winter. And go ahead and have a good meeting today. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Item 3 is invitation to the audience for public comments. We have some audience this evening. Welcome. Glad everyone's taking the time to be here this evening. The mic is open if you would like to address anything. That includes the board, the staff, or anything at this time. Hello, could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, it's William L. Carr, Bill Carr. I'm the president of SPI Golf Homeowners Joint Venture. And we have formed a group to purchase the golf course from IDC Bank. And we hope to close on that transaction at the end of November. There's still many details to be worked out. One of the very important ones is there's an existing agreement between the bank and the water district, which is essential for the operation of the golf course. A number of people got involved in the project because we're concerned that the neighborhood doesn't become similar to Valley International over there in Brownsville, where ownership has not had the resources and the will to maintain the courses that should have been maintained or should be maintained. And there's been a tremendous diminution in housing values. In the community within the HOA there's roughly 1,000 properties. If the golf course does not get proper care, even at $20,000 a lot, which would be per property, which would be a minimal diminution in value, we're looking at the loss in the community of a minimum of $20 million. The losses will actually be much greater than that. One can speculate as whether it be 20 million or 50 million with respect to the diminution in the housing values on the properties there. Let alone the fact that the property there that is available for development would suffer substantially. So, again, I know very, very little about water, but I did want to introduce myself and to learn more about water. Talking to your folks here, I at least learned there's 3 different types of water, etc. I know the golf course primarily buys raw water. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. I don't know whether the ponds on the lake, Ruben Grease is here, for example. There's people that live along, 21 homeowners that live along the 13th hole where the pond has been dry. And I don't know what ponds on the golf course and the community have been fed by water from the water district. But we need to get caught up to speed. So far, I've been involved in this for a couple of months, and our principal activity has been putting the group together. And we have about 35 homeowners involved. We've raised $1,600,000, which may or may not be enough. The golf course is in need of repair. and that, so my purpose is, one, to say hello, but also to a little bit throw ourselves on your mercy as to getting, we need help from the right people within the water community as to what we ought to be doing to minimize the cost and to maximize the benefit for the community. So I look forward to seeing you all and working with the appropriate people. I apologize for not being prepared, but I learned at the meeting and drove over from Monterey, having arrived a few minutes ago. So again, we are hopeful that we can work with the bank and work with other folks and bring that golf course back to a number of years ago, which would be a magnet for the community rather than just something that's bouncing along, surviving but yet not prospering. It's incredibly important that we get it out of the perception of a bank-owned foreclosed property, and that we get it back into a situation. The course has not had tender loving care in a number of years. There's been virtually no marketing. We need to work with the island and with the golf course and with the community and really have a concerted effort to promote the community. So we'll be asking for your help and hopefully your indulgence and your advice primarily.
Thank you kindly for your taking on a big project, and I think it's great for the community overall. There is an agenda on here in item number 11, so we are working to work with you and make things successful.
Okay, well, we came here to, again, thank you for your attention, and that we approach it with a sense of optimism. And I don't know, I've never been on a board like you all serve on one. I thank you for that, and I hope that we're in a position where we're not just, excuse the term, bitching in it. We're asking for your help.
Thank you for your time and your comments. At this time, board, staff, fellow members of the audience, would like to discuss anything? We're moving on to item number 4. Consider and approve the minutes of the workshop on October 10th, 2017. So everyone had a chance to review.
Move to approve.
Motion approval by D. Wells.
Second.
Seconded by R. Wells. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
We are. None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5, consider and approve the minutes of the regular meeting on October 11th, 2017. So everyone had a chance to review for any corrections or comments.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by D. Wells.
Second.
Seconded by R. Wells. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. Moving to item number 6, consider and discuss job descriptions for the following positions: General Manager, District Engineer, Director of Operations, Director of Finance, and Purchasing Agent.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I provided the job descriptions that y'all requested. It's just for y'all's information, so y'all can understand what direct position, each one of us is doing. So if y'all have any questions on it, just feel free to call me. We're here to give you all the information that you all need, and that's all I have for the job descriptions.
I actually requested this information for the board members. I wasn't sure if you guys have done this before and looked at the criteria for the people, the positions that we hire. And I think it's important we're aware of them, that we know what we're asking when we hire these people. And more importantly, that our general manager can follow up and has guidelines, and we can certainly work on it in the future and make some amendments or changes or things if you look at them, see things you want to add or change or subtract, whatever you want to do. I know I've pointed out, highlighted some things on mine, but it's not anything we have to discuss today. We can do it at another time. But I wanted you guys to have the information as well.
It is good information, and it's good to review and be updated.
Yeah, like I mentioned, feel free to call me, at your convenience. I'll be here.
Would we want to do this individually with Mr. Galvan, or should we just take and maybe make it a
I think we could do it as
action item later to kind of review? Because I thank you for bringing it up. It just kind of helps fill in a lot of information. I see some things that, I won't use the term outdated, but they're outdated, and maybe we need to look at them and address a few things. I have some notes in here.
It might require a workshop maybe, doing it in a workshop setting. That way everybody's free to, 'cause we can get input from staff as well.
Definitely, and not necessarily directing staff, but getting input from staff
Right.
and making some recommendations from a workshop in a cooperative effort
Yep.
to make it even ground for everybody.
So save your notes.
We'll be having some workshops probably coming up, so I would recommend we probably put it as a topic for a future workshop coming up.
Yeah, and just allocate a short time for it, half hour max.
I'll
We have our notes.
look at the scheduling that we have and then probably send you an email on it, see what date you all prefer to have the workshop. But like I said, if you all have any questions as of right now, call me tomorrow so I can look at them and have them ready, prepare them, whatever we need to do, and follow up with the workshop.
If we did want to make changes or amendments or updating on that, is that a agenda item, or how does that worok, Eddie? It's just an agenda
It could be an
item?
agenda item, a resolution, that the board has to approve, and then we'll move forward with it, if all agree to it. So,
First would be the workshop to just
Workshop
discuss it
first,
and do it,
correct.
and then come back with a
With an agenda item.
agenda item to adopt it.
Correct.
This is a discussion item. Anything else to add to this? Nothing, moving forward. Item number 7, general manager's report.
I wanted to mention to the board that there was a request, let me see, what page was it? On the ground maintenance that he agreed to go ahead and ask the adjacent neighbor when he does the lawn maintenance or cutting the mowing the grass on our side, that he'd go and contact the adjacent neighbor and ask him if it's okay with them to cut the other side on their property. And he agreed to it, he signed the paper, and I think I attached a paper on it where he signed it. So that's all.
May I make a very short, of what I would consider a correction? That's the number 5, amend to existing contract agreement. I thought it should read, and just for your reference in the future, you might, where it says contractor will ask, I think it needs to be a little more directive, and the contractor shall seek
Okay?
the adjacent property owner's permission to cut. I would not say his side, I would say their side. Gender neutral.
Got it.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Comments? Moving forward, to item number 8, district engineer's report, Charles.
Yeah, the first item is basically a discussion on the South Padre Island Golf Course effluent water agreement, which is the reclaimed water coming from the sewer plant and then running across to that community lake to the north. So basically, we installed the cloth media filter, what was it, in 2013, I believe? And we worked directly with Gail there at the Neighborhood Association, and we kind of ran it until their billing requested amount maxed out. So it was basically done in a couple of months, and then it kind of basically stayed off for a while. But recently we got it repaired, cleaned it up, and ever since August 1st, we've been running on a daily basis and just setting it to no bill, mainly to maintain the equipment. And so today we're running that cloth media filter pretty much from 8 to about 4:30, and it'll run for about 30 minutes, and then because of low level in the chlorine contact basin, it needs about 30 minutes to regenerate, and then we manually go back and turn it on, and it runs another 30 minutes. So, on a day, we'll also have to shut down for maintenance and whatnot, but we can, I was just looking at the flow records, we've basically been able to send anywhere from 10,000 gallons to 46,000 gallons in one day to that lake through that cloth media filter. And right now, Laguna Heights is going to Port Isabel, but by the end of the week, we're going to fix a lift station to where we can start sending that neighborhood over to Laguna Vista to help increase that flow. So, there's ways we can work with, getting more water over to that community lake on the north side. And and then I don't know if we want to discuss about this wastewater treatment covenant that you've seen in the backup. So, I don't know if you have any opinion on that one.
I don't have opinion, I was like a question with a caution that, if we do have an agreement in place, that we make sure that, there's an allocation of two different parties, what I'm reading, make sure that there's no shorting or neglect or any room for any conflict from either party if they're not getting their fair share. And if it would be correct that my understanding is this is affluent, this is discharge water that's clear for it. So it's really something the district has to get rid of.
Right.
And so it's just going to a better use. And so there is some cost and some maintenance associated with this process to get it to a more desirable location that
Correct.
benefits the community more than just sending it out to the bay. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we either go to that Port Isabel Reservoir, behind Holly Beach Road, or there's the second, we have two discharge permits. The second one's to go to the community lake.
I see the backup material. I'd just like to continue that we have, more correlation with the receivers of this water and just make sure it's doing the right job.
Charles alluded to this utility easement that was originally entered into by Dixie South Texas Holdings that was a successor to Dixie Mortgage Company. And the Delos Partnership, which was Landmark, was the successor to the Dixie South Texas Holdings, and IBC is the successor to Delos. And in the agreement, it spells out quite clearly that the grantors, which in this case would be IBC Bank, are entitled to affluent free of charge. The only provision in there is that there's supposed to be a 20-80% division of that affluent between Christensen and the golf course. But Christensen has never put any type of facilities or pipes to take it. So
Yeah, we actually have his
technically-
meter installed already. He needs to build to it.
Yeah, so technically, legally, the golf course is entitled to all of it for free, right?
Correct.
I would like
Affluent.
I would like legal to clarify that the chain of grantor to grantee or grantee to grantor, grantor to grantee is concurrent or continuous with the chain that Mr. Houston just outlined, the chain of ownerships. The original agreement conveyed that and gave them opportunity. So is there the need for a chain of those documents or some documentation that whoever we're dealing with today is indeed have the right of that conveyance?
Okay. Sure.
All right, so I guess moving on to the next subject here on the engineer's report. It's feedback from the election order presentations. I believe it was October 10th. We had the Laguna Vista and the Port Isabel town meetings at the same time. So, in general, we got some positive feedback. On the 11th, we presented to Long Island Village, and then the 18th, we presented to the island. And basically, some of the comments we got back on it was, for example, the one comment from Long Island Village is wanted to see their 4 lift stations being considered in our lift station rehab. And so at this point, with our engineer's report approved, and the election order established, we don't have that ability to amend the engineer's report at this point. So the election order will go based on what we have in, as stated in that approved engineer's report. And as far as lift stations, there is contingency dollars in there, and we took a real brief look where maybe 3 of the smaller ones could fit in that contingency, but one of their lift stations would be, pretty tough to fit in that contingency amount. So we'll have to figure that issue out down the road. And then as far as on the island, basically their comments were they wanted to see taste and odor improvements on the drinking water, and then in general we got a lot of comments about odor control and the need for addressing that issue.
Is there going to be any type of publication before the election on the bond?
No, just on our website. If you go to lagunamadrewater.com.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the engineer's report posted as a
Nobody does.
PDF file. I mean, and it's available here on review.
Nobody does that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a hidden public notification that everyone has access to.
Are you don't have the ability, or it's not legal, or what?
Not, what do you mean?
To publicize one more time the...
Well, when we use district resources, we can't use advocacy. We can just basically state the facts.
I'm not saying
Or,
advocate,
yeah,
but I mean just
exactly.
to educate. And one thing I wanted to pick up on, the other day when you were talking about the line item on the aeration,
Mhm.
it was a lengthy summary of cost savings, and really too lengthy. But
Yeah.
the other items that were to be considered in the bond election, we're supposed to have some cost drivers attached to them, savings. And people want to know real simple. They want to know what it's going to cost, and if you can save some money, they want to know more or less how much you can save. And you don't show that. I mean, we don't give that. And when you start talking about present values of income streams, I mean, that just goes over the head of 90% of the people.
Yeah.
If you could do one more ad, press, and spell out each category in the bond issue, this is what this is going to cost, this are their estimated savings over 20 years, real simple. Bam, 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 cost savings, cost savings,
Yeah.
cost savings.
So I'd have to put the savings on an O&M cost reduction. So yeah, let me work with the engineering and.
You don't
see
have a
if we
whole
can-
lot of time to
Yeah,
get
exactly.
public something in the paper.
Right.
Is it too late, Dina?
For this week, but not for next week. Still have time for next week.
Before the election? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, please do it, because, I mean, people,
60% early vote or whatever.
yeah.
I mean, it's too late now.
The other 40 can make it.
Oh, on the brochures. Did we have it on the? Okay.
Should have been in the
Oh, it's on the
paper this
4th.
week.
Charles, sorry, were you able to respond when the comments were made related to odor control? Were you able to?
Well, the response is that our election order does not address odor control. So that would be a future project we'd have to
That's not
address.
my question. My question is, when the comments were made related to they'd like to have odor control, were you able to inform them? We just spent a whole bunch of money the last meeting on our degreasing elements that the district is taking an active role in. Go
I
ahead,
was able to
Carlos.
respond to that.
You were. Thank you
Yes,
for
yes,
that.
sir.
But Carlos, it wasn't really a positive response. It was, well, it's,
Yeah.
we don't have to do it. Well,
But-
people
but-
want to know that that's a big priority, because their smell is.
Smell and taste.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm out of place here right now, but I would like to say is Long Island Village went on the record today that we are in favor of this bond issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving forward.
All right, yeah, the next item is just the gravity sewer and crossing at Padre Boulevard in La Quinta. We did get the topography from Mejian Roads. They took care of the private side directly with the various landowners. And there is enough depth to decommission Tiki's lift station, Clayton's, and La Quinta all in one sewer line. So I'll be working on that, in the next couple of weeks to get that crossing on Padre out for bid. And they're already moving on getting their easements dedicated.
And I expect we'd have a better decision after our executive session tonight.
Okay. Oh, yeah, exactly. All right, yeah, so that's the last one. And the last one on the Port Isabel wastewater treatment plant buffer zones. So you're aware, we needed to put residential restrictions for a certain area around the sewer plant. It's already completed for the Hess track where we acquired the easement. The animal shelter and the city dump have been rezoned by the Port Isabel. And then we got the title commitment for the Garcia track yesterday. And so we're going through the various exclusions to work on closing on that property as well. And so and then that's all tied to that amendment that we'll go ahead and get wrapped up.
Is that for that additional tank, the additional?
Well, it was part of our permit, when we did our permit amendment with the new structures for the headworks and everything for all the improvements we're doing out there. It sort of triggered a review of our buffer zone for the entire property. And being that it's outside of we are inside the city limits, but it's outside their zoning maps. So we had to put a residential restriction for about 150 feet outside our fence.
Thank you, Charles. Moving on to item number 9, Director of the Operations Report.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I provided some reports. The first one being the replacement repair of the backcount trucks. As you're aware, we have 2 backcount trucks currently, a 2000 and a 2008. We were trying to acquire some bids on repairing the 2000, and we did get a couple of bids, but quite frankly, none of the vendors recommended repairing that truck.
Naturally.
The 2008, we have some bids, and that truck was in repairs just the last 3-4 weeks. We got it back on Monday, and I'm not sure whether the vendors that provided a bid on refurbishing the 2008, are aware of what they told us there at Rush Company, where we picked up the truck from. They told us that the piston, one of the pistons was going out, so it may need an overhaul.
Piston to the motor, the main engine?
Yes, sir.
What engine's in that?
I'm sorry?
What engine is that truck?
The Cummins engine?
It's in the Sterling, right?
Yes, Sterling.
Just a Ford?
Yes, a Ford.
Yeah, so just a Cummins engine, just a small block?
That's big, it's a V6.
Oh, then
Six
that's,
engine, but,
that's just the common truck engine that's in all the Dodge trucks.
well, it's a Sterling, it's made by Ford, but the engine is Cummins engine.
Right.
And we got a report that one of the pistons had the blow-by, the rings. Yeah, eventually it's gonna need an overhaul.
That's $4,000. That's all that is, just complete overhaul.
We have received a couple of bids, since I provided this information that's in the agenda here, I have received a couple of other bids as far as purchasing a new truck. And I guess what I'm want to know from the board is, I'm going to give all this information to the purchasing agent. I don't know if the board would like to include this in a special meeting, or do we just bring the information to you all, make a recommendation?
I've got some questions on this item as it is right now, if I may.
Okay.
I'm going to your second page, your memo of August 14th, and you're outlining what each of the units are. And you're referencing the Sterling, you answered that. That's the Ford with the V6 Cummins.
That's the
And-
2008?
2008. And then it states in here that the Volvo Unit 21, that's actually VA.CON, Vicon, that's the brand mark, not one word, that's just the brand of it, Vicon, of that vacuum truck. There's others out there. But my point is, it says Volvo, and so it says nobody in the valley has software to check this truck. What motor's in that truck?
We have to take it to the Edinburgh, and they didn't have the software, so
What engine's in that truck? Is it a Volvo engine or is it a Detroit?
it's a Volvo engine.
And they didn't have that there?
No, they didn't have the software, so we took it twice to Houston. We had to ship it over there, 'cause that truck was,
I asked, but that's Alex there at the Volvo shop. I've had Volvos for years. And I just say, gentlemen, that a 2000 may sound old, but truckers now are going back and buying these old trucks because they're pre-emission. And they're not loaded up with computers out the wazoo. And they're much easier, more straightforward that they can work with. So you say that they were not able to, so it was the Detroit, excuse me, it was the Volvo engine in that truck?
yes, sir, it's a Volvo engine.
Would you provide me with that number, please?
Yes, sir, I get that.
That so I can take and follow up myself to feel more comfortable with this?
Yes, I'll get it.
Because then you're saying that they don't continue, you have stalls on them and things like that. Is that main motor associated?
Because we have issue with the electrical on it also,
Which part?
on the transmission, and then the...
In shifting, electrical shifting?
Yeah, shifting.
Is it a manual or automatic?
It's automatic, it's a Allison transmission.
Straightforward.
We had the issue with stalling while driving. They couldn't figure it out what's wrong with it.
Volvo couldn't do that?
No, sir.
Just an old diesel mechanic ought to be able to figure that one out.
No, but it's an unsafe vehicle to drive it. That's why we have it here at the shop.
Because it stalls, how frequently?
This stalls, when you drive it, you don't know when it's gonna stop, so.
But you haven't really determined what, I'm looking at this as my own truck. I've got a Freightliner now, had Volvos for years. And, you have those issues, you just get it to somebody who can fix it, or, determine what it is. So you've taken it,
We took it to Houston twice.
that doesn't answer the question. You didn't, did you take it to somebody who could really fix it? Because this is just a straightforward truck.
They couldn't.
This is a 1 million mile truck. This truck should run 1,000,000 miles. Okay, they do it all day long over the road. That's why I'm saying it surprises me that they can't fix it.
So a lot of times it's just the miles and it's just the hours that we work on it too.
I
It's
get
got more
that.
hours than miles that we use.
I get that, but you know, those trucks last a long time. Before we throw something away because it's unsafe, I don't dispute that, but I'm not satisfied that you haven't tried to get it fixed by the right people. Just because you took it to Houston, you know, get me the engine number, please.
We've taken
The
it to
model.
almost-
Yeah, we'll get it.
The
We'll get you that.
Yeah,
We've
and
taken it to the
in
whole
FAR,
dealer, too, especially-
FAR, yeah,
Yeah,
I know where it is.
yeah, they can't fix it. They should have all the software and everything for those trucks.
He just needs the model number?
Yeah, the model number.
You
And give me a VIN too.
give it to me tomorrow. Thank you.
And the Dutz engine, that's on the vacuum pump, I'm assuming?
No, that's on the unit 33, the other back on.
Right.
Yeah, that's the huge engine on that.
And that's the vacuum motor.
That's for the water pump.
Yes.
That controls the water jet pump.
And they use those engines on agriculture, marine, everything. And it's surprising that you can't get service for it.
Yeah, we do. Oh, there's a Stuart Citizen in Edinburgh.
Yes, sir?
That's the only company that has the software to check that engine.
And is there a problem with it?
Well, before we used to have a lot of issues with it. It was go around for a while, and then we shut off, and then we'll start again. So
What about now?
yeah, it's working right now. So
I appreciate that we need to have working equipment. I do see in another report that, you know, there was vacuum service and we were able to get vacuum service in to fix the manhole to be repaired.
yes.
For me to support spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this equipment, I would like to have a little more of the information I requested tonight. Let me do my homework to feel more comfortable with my recommendation.
Yes.
My motion would be to table.
There's no motion, it's just discussion.
Oh, excuse me, I
Well,
apologize.
we can wait and discuss it further.
Sincerely appreciate your effort looking into this. This is a lot of money.
That's the only reason. If it were a pickup, that's a different story, but, you know, I want good running, dependable equipment here, but I want to feel comfortable that you've reached out to the right people for that. And when you get it into looking at new stuff, I really want purchasing and the director of operations to be all over this country looking for them. Because this is so common, so available, and so competitive. And I'm not in the business, but I'm not married to a brand. Locon is not necessarily the brand. It's what we can get the service with the best and the best price if we're looking at new ones.
Yes,
Well, quick question. When you say that you want us to look for prices throughout the country, pretty much, one thing that we need to look at is for service when issues come up with that vehicle. And we've done that, and then the only place that can service it is in Florida or some other place.
No, I don't suggest that at all.
Okay.
You know, when you look at these different units, they have dealers all over the country and they have service all over the U.S. So you definitely want to pay very good consideration what the service is. But when you're dealing, you have two different units here.
Yes, sir.
You got the truck and then you got the equipment. And any truck dealer, you know, Freightliner is the old workhorse, it'll probably do better. You're not as limited as you are with the Volvo. That's more of a dealer-specific item. Then you get into the motor in there, then you have a Detroit International Cummins. There's all kinds of people who can work on those. So I was looking at the estimates on the cost of repair, and I laughed when I saw what they were wanting to charge for freight from San Antonio, $8,400 from freight to San Antonio, even back and forth. That's crazy. They can ask it, but I sure wouldn't pay that. I'm done.
you very much.
Chair, I've got a couple of comments. The purchase, are these purchases or leases on new equipment? Would it be out by purchasing the unit, or are we gonna lease it?
Well, as of right now, we're not doing anything on that
Right,
yet.
right, but if we,
But it would-
because you're gonna come back to us with some of that information, my question is, what are we looking at if we did go with new equipment? Are we looking at purchasing or a lease, or?
You would like to consider both options?
I would like to consider both options.
Okay, at this point, we've only received quotes on purchases. I can ask for quotes on leases as well.
And he did mention to me that we'd look into leases also, so he mentioned that to me.
Yeah, and just as a point of reference, I think if my numbers are correct, we're spending $45,000 a year maintaining these two pieces of equipment right now. And that's what we spent the last 4 years.
I get that, and I still have questions that we're spending it properly.
Okay.
Great point, Chairman. Moving forward.
The next report that I have was on buildings that are not currently covered by insurance because they lack some repairs. On that first building is the water pump building in the river. It has the roof has some holes where they take out the pump or the motor when they're going to work on. Unfortunately, 2 of those holes are covered with just pieces of wood. It's just wood thrown over them, and we have 2 that have that plastic, but one of those plastics has a hole. I provided some pictures for you all to look at.
You're referring to 2 skylights,
Yes, sir.
manufactured skylights, one is broke,
That's correct.
the PVC plastic. You're referring to the other piece of wood that are actually plywood covers
Plywood,
that were
right.
fabricated to cover the holes. I'm just correcting.
Yes.
Not just thrown over these. I'm
No,
seeing.
You're correct.
I'm fabricated covers
Yes,
that
sir.
do need to be replaced, so this is just a maintenance issue.
Yes,
And I would think
and
our construction crew could,
I've already talked with the construction manager and the water plant manager, and they're getting together where we're looking at repairing them with some hatches that we can put a lock on and we can open when they need to be opened.
you mentioned metal that you're proposing to replace them with metal hatches? Was
No.
that here, that was a different place?
They can be metal or aluminum hatch doors.
Or plywood,
With plywood.
treated plywood, if you're,
Plywood.
if these are just like manhole or lift
Right.
lift holes for,
I think what he was getting at is that we need to have them insured, and I'm not sure that would
Yeah.
qualify.
And in reality,
We need
these
something
buildings
more.
really worth worrying about the insurance. I mean, self-insure them, and for what you pay in the insurance, and I'm familiar with the buildings, you're better off to self-insure them. They're just structures, they're not anything of high dollar value or of major significance. I mean, that's just my
That's true.
opinion.
It's just block building.
I mean,
agreed, but I want to make sure that
safety and
we're not
security,
in
yes.
violation of something says that we're supposed to be,
TCE, yes.
that we're supposed to be insured. So first, I'm addressing the condition it's in now and would like that to be fixed in the proper way to pass any inspection, but certainly to serve the purpose they were intended to serve. Sorry, continue.
Yes, sir. The other building that we're looking at is at the Isla Blanca building, and that one's in need of roof repair. The edge of the building is abutted to another building, and the base on that roof is falling off, so it tends to leak down into the building. And right underneath, as I provided some pictures, there are some electrical boxes, and currently they're just covered up with some plastic so that we don't get any water in there. Those electrical boxes, from my understanding, are fairly new and they're very costly. So we need to get that taken care of.
I'm appalled that it's gotten this bad. we have the contractor here, I just see a tar, paper, and gravel roof that's not sealed on the edges, and that's a very common thing to get somebody up there to swab on some hot tar and fix it, but here's the contractor here.
You know, Mr. Gomez, you put together a good report, but going forward with what Doyle is suggesting, Carlos, and I'm new to the board, do we have a department within this organization that takes care of maintenance and repairs?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then that department is falling short if these things haven't been addressed. Now, they haven't been addressed because they haven't known they need to be addressed or whatnot, but I don't see any reason why this is coming to us tonight. These things should be taken care of whenever they need to be taken care of. I don't think it requires board approval for the construction department to do their job.
No, I believe
Yeah.
he's not asking for approval. He's
Well, I
just,
know, but he
part of his.
did a good report. He did a good report. I wish you didn't have to report on this, because when you report on this, it points the finger at somebody or somebodies
All
that
of us.
aren't doing the job.
And I don't think it's per se the construction department. If they don't know of it, I put it back on whoever's in charge of that department, what that building is under. Gentlemen,
What
you need to take care of our assets.
we do. I'd like to mention that Mr. Gomez has just gotten on board with us, and then the construction crew has not been a construction crew for too long. So we're getting into that, and I told Mr. Gomez to report, what he's accomplished
No
this week.
complaints there.
Just a little report there. But he's just finding things, and he's gonna take care of it.
No complaints. Thank you.
Great report, great report.
No approvals, just report. Thank you.
And again, that third building was at Andy Bowie, and that dealt just with the eaves and the base of the roof. I have talked to the construction manager on all three of the buildings, and he is going to repair them. Again, this is just for informational purposes, but he does have some priorities. These buildings have been neglected here for over a year, so that's why.
I would put
guess-
priority one with the roof leaking on the electrical box.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Definitely. Definitely.
And I'd like Mr. Gomez to come back to us maybe a couple months to update us.
If you can, just show us some after pictures.
With how they've been nicely improved.
Right.
Okay.
But I do compliment you on your report for
Thank you.
1 week.
And the other two buildings that are not insured, basically require an approval by a windstorm engineer certifying that they are okay and can be included. For whatever reason, they haven't been inspected at this point. I am in the process of trying to get a hold of a windstorm inspector.
Not only will they need to be that, but they'll need to be involved with the repairs. They'll need to see the
Yes.
process to make sure that it's done properly. So following up what the chairman said, I think it would be beneficial to make some determination of which of these assets are the most vulnerable or need to be insured or not. All of them need to be kept in good working order. So I think one and the same, we're talking about insurance, windstorm insurance, at the same time have a good working structure.
And the last report is just to inform the board that I have been assigned the RFP on the meters, and I am in the process of trying to review it. I've talked to the purchasing agent, and based on what happens with the next couple of weeks for the bond, we will come back to the board with a recommendation.
Excellent.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Gomez.
Good, thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, consider and ratify the payment to Southern Trenchless for vacuum truck rental and manhole repair at 104 Corral Street, South Padre Island. Mr. Gomez.
Yes, sir. Again, this is a report on a collapsed manhole at Corral Street and Laguna Street at South Padre Island. What it boils down to is as much as we downgrade Unit 21, the 2000 backcon, it did help us to sustain a bad situation from getting worse. Intermittently, the truck was working, so they did manage to contain the sewer in the hole, and it didn't overspill. So that was good, but unfortunately, they weren't able to bring it back that night or that morning. The mechanic had to go out there and bring it back. In the meantime, the collections manager did have to call Southern Trenchless and have them take out the back truck that they have out there at a cost of $450 an hour. And so their bill was for $4,500, it was for 10 hours. And they rehabilitated the manhole for $3,500. So we have a couple bills that total to $8,000 from Southern Trenchless that would need your approval, and it was done, excuse me, it was done on an emergency basis.
And I'd like to compliment the staff for a thank you. I know they were working there late night. There was some late night time in there.
Yep.
I don't know if it could have been, I hear everything you're saying, and that was the effect, but not necessarily the cause. And I'm just as interested to try to ascertain a cause. And I see in the third paragraph from the bottom, you couldn't ascertain an exact cause of the manhole collapse other than soil erosion. It would be my experience that could only come from a leak that was in there somewhere that took and eroded the sand around it that would cause that. So if I'm as interested as anything as prevention, I don't know how you would do that or what, but that thing just all of a sudden sinking.
It's a high volume, old line is the reality.
Right, so it had a leak. Bottom line, it had a leak somewhere that blew out that sand that supported it. So I don't know what we can do to prevent it. Stuff happens.
Well, in talking to the collections manager, I understand he does have a schedule where he goes in and cleans out these manholes. Unfortunately, he just hadn't gotten to that one yet before it collapsed.
My attempt at humor would just be to have him stand on them if they support that. We're in good shape.
We do have a preventive maintenance program on the island, and we do have a lot of manholes on the island.
Yeah.
Just with the fiberglass, it's kind of hard to.
You can't, but that settling starting to happen. That, like you said, it's a high volume, so I can see with a few hours it can blow out, but still.
And that's in front of a big business, and it's not really, those lines aren't designed for what that business is outputting. I mean, that's the reality.
Okay.
I don't think, there's not any parking on it or over it or no traffic that goes over it. I think it's just shifting sand.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir, other than at this point, I just need your approval to go ahead and make those payments.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Avalos.
Is that an action item?
Let's consider and ratify payment.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Houston. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
There are any opposed? None. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving to item number 11, consider and discuss South Padre Island Golf Course raw water agreement with possible action if necessary.
On this one, I provided the agreement requested by Mr. Houston. Is anything that y'all need to be aware of or any questions on it?
I think we had asked, then you earlier, Doyle asked legal to look into that contract and see about if it's going to be.
This one's another agreement. This one's the second agreement. Well, actually, the first one.
Okay.
For raw water. The other one was for effluent water.
So is there the same conveyance as perennial conveyances?
Effluent water comes from the wastewater treatment
Right, I
plant.
understand. But any agreements in there,
Yeah,
just have legal, just make sure that everything is good, that, transfer's good.
Right.
Can you give us some history on the rate increases, Charles?
Yeah, well, in general, back in the day, there was a pretty large base charge, on the range of $250 for the raw water agreement, and then a cost of about 40-something cents per 1,000 gallon. And at the same time, we had an interest in Reservoir One to be also to get this Portisville Little League on raw water as well. And that being a small customer, it doesn't make sense to have a small customer having a $250 base charge. And so at the same time, we did a rate study in 2015 or 2014, and based on that rate study that economist.com had done, they determined the cost of service for raw water was about 55 cents per 1,000 gallon with zero base charge. And so there was basically that request was to establish a uniform charge, and that's where those series of memos are out there. And so really, in that rate study, there was a 5-year plan, and so the 55 cent per 1,000 gallon would be a cost of service under today's conditions, and that 80 cents or 76 cents per 1,000 gallons would be the conditions if we had the advanced water treatment facility sending effluent back to that Reservoir 3. That would be the cost impact for doing that. If we had it, which of course we don't have the facility today. But regardless, the board chose to approve that rate that's in place today. At the time we did that, we negotiated the contract with IBC.
And the contract with IBC limits their usage to how many thousand gallons?
Well, that's the same language from the original agreement.
No, I'm asking you how much.
I don't know by memory. Maybe 700 acre feet. I mean, we never had issues.
All right. Are they bumping that amount, or I asked Mr. Galvan if he could let us know if we were getting close to the maximum allotment, or was there still room?
Yes,
There's still room.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's all triggered because we're prorated. That would be the only time where we'd have to take a closer look at how much they're being allocated. But under normal conditions, we don't have a real limit, that puts us at risk.
And as I understand, there's an 18-inch meter, or is it 16-inch meter?
18.
All right.
18.
So there's an 18-inch meter there at the water plant. The raw water comes through that meter, and after it goes through that meter, the golf course divvies up where the water goes, right?
Correct.
The district has they don't control the valves, they don't control the meters. It's the people at the golf course, they determine where that meter goes they determine where that water goes after it goes to the meter. And I've seen the distribution maps, and there's opportunities for those lakes to be filled. But it needs to be known that it's not the water district that's restricting the water to the lakes. Somebody at the golf course is not wanting to pay for the water at the lakes. So I think there's two issues. I think one issue is, number one, the rate. We need to go back to the 55 cents that was originally agreed upon. And then number two is the golf course, the new entity that's going to be the owner or whatnot, they've got to take charge of their own water. Now, some of the lakes are owned to the middle of the lakes by the homeowners that surround the lakes, and they've been paying to fill their lakes.
And how, if I may ask, I've heard that, is there a meter, and are they co-op billing it, or how is that?
I don't know how it's working.
I'm just curious how that works.
I don't know how,
Some are metered, some are not.
but it's not a water district.
It's
meter.
metered raw, it's not a water district meter, so it's.
No, they have their own meter, the golf course proper has some meters on the distribution line to
The homeowners association or something, or
Well,
the entity or association?
they buy so many acre or so many acre feet or so many thousands of gallons, and it comes through the water district meter, and then the golf course entity itself, they take this water and they make some association, there's several associations, there's different groups out there, well, I need 2,000 gallons for my lake, and they'll make some type of agreement, send a check. But it's not a water district obligation. And I think we need to settle on the rate, settle on the maximum allotment that everyone can live with, And then the people at the golf course and the different associations and the master and the different, they're the ones that need to come together and say, look, we want water in our lakes, we're paying you for it. And the bottom line is IBC's not, it's the biggest check writer out there. They haven't been wanting to write the checks. Am I missing something, you guys? Mr. Carr?
Well, thank you for the clarification. When you said a better rate, that it was music in my ears. I had a meeting with IBC this week, and we have an issue between the golf course and the homeowners association that I think we'll be able to resolve by the local members of the homeowners association basically gone astray or have an interest that is peculiar. And I think we could get the bank to be much more active as the declarant and help us with reconciling the problem.
I think it might be my suggestion tonight is let's throw a temporary mandate on this thing. And then if this new group comes into existence, buys the golf course, then sit down and execute a new contract. But I think I would recommend in the form of a motion that we go back to the 55-cent rate that they were paying before, right, Charles?
Well, that was the recommendation based on a rate study that was never implemented.
Somebody made the comment once that 55 cents was our break-even point.
Correct.
Correct?
That was the
Because we were
economist.
selling it to them for less than we were paying for it.
Well, we had, because that rate of 43 cents, when you take away that $250 base charge, well, yeah, that's below cost of service.
Right.
So that's how we had to
exactly. And I
increase it
think
to 55.
Maybe, I think it was Carlos that said 55 cents was about break-even. Somebody had
It
calculated that.
was in one of the, I guess, surveys that we had.
Maybe somebody said.
Well, 60 was when we approved it.
It was one of the surveys that we had, and
Well,
they
it started as 55 in the
checked for how
recommendation.
much the cost is and electrical cost and transferring pumps, and it was around that,
Yeah,
55 cents.
I remember 55 was the number.
But let me understand, if you're saying to make a Band-Aid approach, are we making this for IBC that's buying the water now? Or I'm not real clear in what you're proposing by putting a Band-Aid in this, and who's buying the water is what I'm not clear on.
Well, I think who's buying the water is still whomever's buying the water. All we're doing is adjusting the rate to what it should be because, like Charles said, it went up to the 80-some-odd cents in anticipation of some improvements being done that never got done.
That the district had to make, or that the entity?
Charles?
No, it was like if we build the new treatment facility to take the effluent of Port Isabel back to Reservoir 3, and the cost of producing that water would bump this rate up to 80 cents.
We're just delivering the water, they're taking it.
Right.
There's no-
Right. It would just be
So you're-
this is just this rate, what the 55 cent covers is pumping off the river, getting it through our 25-mile system and getting it to them.
Water to their
Yeah,
tanks or to their lakes, I get to their storage tanks.
right.
My understanding, we have a pump there, but again, I'm still just getting acquainted with the water.
Well,
Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
If we're going to considering, following up on the chairman's question, is who's responsible for paying, I hear undecision amongst the conversation. I'm going to ask legal to review this agreement that was dated 9th of December 2015 that was for IBC. And then I hop back to the back in section 18, assigns owner hereby binds itself as successors, assigns the representatives for the faith and full performance of terms and provisions of this agreement. I would just like to know, per this agreement, that everything we're talking about doing here, I don't have a problem with what Mr. Houston proposed. I just would like to feel comfortable that we are dealing with the right party related to this agreement. And that party then, if they're dealing with assigns, then they need to be responsible for, the payments. I want to be careful the district isn't getting involved with a feud or a disagreement or any lack of agreement with IBC and any HOAs.
Yeah. Very good point, sir. We have a purchase contract that we made September 22nd, and that contract is set to close on November 30th. And under that agreement, the bank has agreed to assign the water agreement, for example. It's our desire, company, to meet with the appropriate people for the water authority and seek a novation of that agreement in our own name. And if we could have an improved rate effective as of that assignment, you'd be benefiting us poor folks rather than the bank. But I don't have any problem if you benefit the bank to pass on relief earlier. But our real issue starts December 1st. In the meantime, though, there are people that are hurting on some of the ponds. The worst situation being along the 13th pole, where there's 27 homeowners that have mosquito nests.
I will support the proposal, the recommendation made through the end of the year, this year, and given time for all that to be settled, as long as the district is able to collect from the responsible party per the agreement. And y'all handle the rest of it yourself.
Well, this thing goes to a meter. If they don't pay the bill,
Who is they?
Yeah, I think
IBC
that,
is the agreement
I
here.
know, but the meter is at the pump station. And if IBC or whomever is writing that monthly check doesn't pay, I imagine someone's going to turn that valve off.
Correct. And I don't have a problem of going through this to the end of the year until they settle the dust.
So if you would amend the rate today, is that going to solve the problem?
No.
To
May
fill
I
up that,
mention something,
or
Rick?
fill up that water?
Well, you know what?
This is not an action item, it's just discussion purposes. We can bring it up again as an action item at the next board meeting. But we can discuss as much as you want.
Further discussion here tonight, can you take some appropriate action on yourself to release water?
If they need the water, I don't see why not.
But
that's-
but here's the deal. You could lower it to 25 cents, 1,000 or whatnot. But if the bank doesn't want to pay it,
Right.
you're not going to pay it.
See,
There's not an
That's
issue
correct.
with the bank
Mr.
paying it.
Huh?
Chair?
Well, we can't speak on that.
Well, I mean, but they're not paying at 80, but we have no guarantee that they would pay it at
I
55.
didn't know that they're not paying it.
Well, of course they're paying it because that's how the fairways are getting watered.
Okay, no, but again, we have a very good relationship with the bank, and our group, again, we have $1,069,000. South Pod, I speak for that group, and we'll certainly guarantee the payment of any charges.
Chair.
South Padre, or SPI Golf Homeowners Joint Venture, Inc., of which I'm president, will certainly guarantee the water charges through the end of the year, whether or not we find it. But we are
Mike, you have.
Thank you. I would just like to say that it looks to me that number 11 is an action item, it's possible action. So-
Oh, yes,
so
it is.
There's
That's
going to
right.
be an action
That's
item
right.
taken. So,
It is in there, you're right.
Thank you very much, guys.
I'd just like to ask,
Can you state your name for the
Oh,
record?
certainly, I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Reuben Grease. I'm a resident out at the golf course community. I have a question with regard to Port Isabel Little League that also uses raw water. Are they being charged the 80 cents or are they being charged the 60 cents?
We can't get into that right now. That's a totally separate, unrelated issue to this. We have to stick to the topic item of the agenda.
Well, it is part of the topic because of the change in what was recommended by the gentleman here and what we're actually paying. So. if there
I'm
is
sorry,
a
sir.
difference-
The way the agenda was written, it was related specifically to the South Padre Island Golf Course.
Well, if
And
it's different-
procedurally, our attorney will be all over us if we go in there and we open it up to the
I
rates.
understand.
So
If
I'm
it is
sorry,
different,
we'd allow you to bring
I
it
would
up
ask
the
you
next
to
time,
look into it.
put it on the agenda, we'd be happy
No,
to.
that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Alex?
I think what, if I understand correctly, what you were asking, Chair, is that we need that assigned from the bank that you're going to get from IBC. And once we have that, then we can come up with a new contract. We have the correct person on that contract who we're going to sell water to. I think that's what we're needing at this point.
So they can buy it at 80 cents or
Well,
55 cents?
I don't think there's any question that somebody's going to pay for the water and somebody's going to be responsible for that meter. That's not the question. The question is, we have a contract that's outdated, and we're in transition. They are purchasing the property. IBC has agreed to give them and release that right to them to be able to use that water, purchase that water, the right to purchase that water. So why don't we wait until we have all that information and draw up the new contract and then come back to the board and approve?
And you're absolutely right as far as what needs to happen. It's just that by the time
At this
this
point-
thing closes
Yeah,
and
but at
new
this point,
agreements.
Mr. Galvan has already agreed to give them water if necessary.
He can't give them anything. He can sell them water, and right now it's at 80
Provide.
cents.
Okay.
And IBC's not going to pay 80 cents a thousand to fill those lakes.
So are you proposing a rate adjustment now?
A temporary rate adjustment pending execution of a new delivery agreement with the purchasers. And
I
that,
agree with that. I think we're making something without any recognition or representation of IBC. That's my
Right.
only question or concern.
but I don't know that we need their
Their-
concurrence to lower their rate.
Well, the golf course can buy water tomorrow at 80 cents. Am I correct?
Yes.
And so if they want to turn on the spigot, let her rip. In the meantime, we can see who we're dealing with properly.
If you do give us the relief right away, it'll make it much easier though for us to use more suasion with respect to the back to do some of the times, for example, people want.
Chairman, I could support that consideration, knowing that we would get a full report to the board of the actual cost of us transporting that water, providing the service that we're discussing here tonight.
But we've already got that at 53. I mean,
I would like to have tomorrow's rate.
Yeah, you can review our 2014 rate study. The raw water was addressed in that analysis.
And since then, electric going up and down, you know.
Yeah, it was a
so can you
5-year
update that?
projection, so yeah.
I don't have a problem taking 2014. This is the 2015 agreement, so we're close
So you're
enough.
establishing today's market rate or an idea of what today's market rate is for a 6-month or 4-month basis of raw water deliveries. It's kind of where you're going toward, is that correct?
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
and again, if we did something tonight to lower the rate tonight, that would just be until a new agreement was signed. So we could be talking 60, 90 days before a new agreement is signed. So my motion tonight is to lower the existing rate to 55 or 53?
55 cents is...
55 cents, pending a new agreement with the new purchasers.
Through
in the
December
next-
31st.
Well, it may
or
take 90 days.
No later than.
Yeah,
I'll second that.
December 31st is fine.
okay. That way, in the meantime, hopefully, the lakes can get filled, the new owners will take over, we can get a new agreement. There's only one other item I would like addressed in the new agreement. The district gets free pumping in times where the dams are a lot of free water. So in times of free pumping, if the golf course can take advantage of that, they still have to pay for it, but it's not charged against their allotment.
Mr. Houston, in respect to Ms. Daisy trying to keep up with your motion.
We had a motion and
I mean,
we had a motion and a second.
Yeah.
And just keep a clear motion that you already have a second for.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Houston and a second made by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. You guys go fishing in those lakes.
Sorry, Daisy.
It's all recorded.
Moving on to item 12, consider and remove from the table the following item tabled at regular meeting on October 11th. Consider and discuss for possible approval District Council and General Manager's recommendation for agreement with Verizon Wireless antenna at Andy Bowie.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by E. Wells and second by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 13, consider and discuss for possible approval of District Council and General Manager's recommendations for agreement with Verizon Wireless antenna at Andy Bowie Park.
Yes,
This one keeps popping and popping.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I made contact today just to verify again, and I've been in contact with Mr. Martella, the representative, And he did mention to me that they weren't gonna go up on the 2%, just 2% is the highest,
Will
they
not.
weren't,
Will not.
will not. Everything else they agreed on the agreement, that it's okay, but except that Verizon is not wanting to go up. So, just wanna make the board aware of that.
Yes, sir, Doran.
Mr. Galvan, Mr. Lucio, I sent an email to y'all. Thank you for forwarding this agreement to me, and I was able to go through it. I sent an email to y'all outlining a couple of items. And in the agreement that on page 8, I was asking if C and D weren't in conflict. I don't know if y'all had a chance to review that or not.
This is listed as page 8 on here.
Yeah, down at the bottom. It's maybe 8.
I'm reading your email. C&D.
You said number 8,
No,
right?
he's right, page 8, right?
Page 8.
C&D.
I'm sorry, I can give you the, it was one,
Is it
Page 8.
14 C&D?
yes, sir.
Okay. In the event, more than once during the 5-year period. Are you talking about the temporary relocation?
Temporary location. It just, when I read it first time, it looked like C and D were kind of conflicting. I just wanted your legal opinion.
Yeah, because, all right, so you're talking about in the event?
Well, and C, if it's a temporary relocation, once during a 5-year period, leaseor shall pay leasee for relocating leasee's equipment. And then in D, in the event temporary relocation result of a casualty under section 32, this is the section we asked them to
Right.
give consideration if there was a casualty.
Right, like a hurricane.
Within that 5-year period, that they weren't going to hit us twice.
Correct.
But, you know, C saying that we're going to pay, but then in D, they're saying if there's a casualty, we
That's
don't.
what we agreed to on the call. What I remember was that if you need to move it for maintenance once in 5 years, we will move it. We will incur the cost, right?
No, they will.
That's what I meant. I'm speaking in third person, I guess. Then they said, okay, but we said, well, what if we need to move it for some unexpected maintenance? And what they said was, if you need to move it for unexpected maintenance that's needed for some additional out of the ordinary maintenance, then the district will pay. So then we said, well, what if it's no fault of our own? What if it's a hurricane? What if it's a tropical storm and we need to go up there and say damages? So what they said was, okay, in that event, if there's a casualty, they could have used better language than casualty, we will pay the expense. But
Right.
if you want to do continuous maintenance that's
They didn't
beyond
want
what...
to be dislodged more than once every 5 years at their expense. If we came in a second year and said, okay, we want to repaint, so you got to move, or something like that, then we see the district would have to pay for that relocation.
If it's
But in that,
more than one time in 5 years.
one more than 1 5 times. But then
Unless
if-
it's
and then
beyond
this-
our control,
That
casualty.
D allowed for any casualty that could happen, because of unexpected expenses, then it's not the district's fault.
Correct.
So we're good with those
Yes, sir.
two.
That's what we agreed to on the phone. I'm not sure if that's what the board necessarily...
I think the operative word here is the difference between happens and required, something that they have to do that they pay, is my understanding. Something that we create through either a natural occurrence or something that we have to move, maintenance or whatever, then we pay.
Yeah.
That's what I understand.
So what I think that they're trying to do in these contracts is say, okay, we understand that there has to be continuous maintenance of this infrastructure. So when we believe that 5 years is the normal routine for people to go up and paint or do repairs or check on the integrity. If you have to move our equipment during that, what is customary in the industry, one time.
More than once.
We will meaning Verizon will cover the cost.
Correct.
Now, if you continue to do repair, let's say, more than once in the 5 years, any additional need for them to move their equipment, what the contract says is the district will pay for it. And I don't think that that's going to happen. I mean,
Okay.
we can build in as many contingencies as we want, but I don't think the district goes and does repair every 6 months on a tower. But then what the board member said, Mr. Wells said, was, well, what if there's a natural disaster? And we need to go up, I hate using that word when we live off the coast, but what if we have to go and do some repairs? Well, and it happens, 6 months after
That's a
you
good
did your
point.
routine repair.
Required repairs.
Right.
Right.
And then they said, okay, well, in that circumstance, Verizon will pay for the relocation.
Then the other question I had was
Yes.
on page 1 of the memorandum of water tower lease agreement. That's kind of like towards the back.
Page,
Number 1, we have 2 agreements here.
correct.
And it's the second agreement that I'm looking at, the memorandum of water tower lease agreement.
Okay.
I'm looking at number 2. And the first line troubles me where it says leaseor hereby leases to leasee a portion of a certain space. Wow, is that wide open? On
The
the
tower-
tower space. So
The tower space.
below that is defining the ground space, but we don't have any definition of the tower space to be occupied. And I felt that there should be some, clarification or defining of what the tower space is.
Isn't
Otherwise,
that,
they could go in there and take up a whole bunch of space on the tower and preclude the district from utilizing that space for something else to be beneficial.
Isn't that
not
150?
mistaken-
That's the ground space.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think they've defined the piece of equipment and give the specs on the equipment, or
I have never seen that.
okay, maybe that's another contract for another district I reviewed.
Well, it's a
They've never
portion
given us the
that certain
specs, right?
space, the tower space of the leaseor's tower.
I believe that,
There's no,
I know over review all the documentation between Verizon, exchange between Verizon and the district, I remember reviewing specifications on the size of the antenna.
then I would just suggest if we do adopt this agreement, that
Be
be
interjected.
more defined
Yes.
pursuant to what is outlined there.
Yes, sir.
Because that's undefined on the tower.
It will continue to grow over time, so it's
Well, then they need to pay
good to
more.
have the area.
And then, the other, 4. And then it was just kind of, let's see here. Land space located as mutually agreed to. There wasn't, then it does define kind of how much area they're going to use, a 10 by 15 area, 150 square feet. But I was looking for something in there that was saying located as mutually agreed to. So in that area around the tower, they get 150 square feet, but this doesn't say where it can be plopped down. To add some language in there that it would be mutually agreed to
Okay.
by lease.
So
Would that be
we-
appropriate? Right now, it's
believe
not
so.
in there.
Right, I mean,
They
you don't
defined
want them to
it.
put it right over, welcome to,
Well, this is the
South
ground
Padre
space
Island.
where they're going to have their
Right.
generator and tower, so the district should have some say in where that is located.
as mutually agreed to. We can motion to approve subject to the changes requested by you.
Got one other question.
Yes, sir. I think in your email, you mentioned something about commencement date.
Yeah, I did, and that was the third one, that's on page 2.
Of the original contract, or of the
No, sir,
memorandum?
the memorandum. In number 3, this shall be effective the date execution by both parties, provided however the initial terms, the agreement shall commence based upon the date leasee commences installation of equipment on the premises. Now, that's too open-ended for me. They don't start paying the lease until they commence putting stuff on the ground, so they're tying up the commitment with this agreement without a firm start date. There should be add some firm start date in there.
Okay,
And that is a question.
sure.
Right now, there's nothing there. They can get this agreement and just sit there and hold it forever by this agreement, if I read it right.
If I read through this, I would venture to say there is language in there that grants us termination rights. And if I flip through it, I don't want to take up the
I
board's
recall
time,
those.
but if I flip
That's
through
about
it,
a
I bet
3-month
you
period
it says,
prior
you
to
know, they
the
do nothing
last
with
date.
this, it's grounds for termination of the lease.
Yeah.
But there's no harm in adding that language, sir.
That's all I was catching there.
Saying,
And
you
then,
know, if you don't install within 2 years of execution of this lease, then the lease no longer is valid, or is terminated.
12 months.
12 months.
Uh,
Would
Is there-
12 months be the consensus, you think?
It would be more of an asking what the industry standard might be in some lease. I don't know how long it takes for these guys to mobilize once they get this agreement. They're probably not ready just to start plugging it in.
Right. I think.
So I'd like that question to be asked to them. We would like to take and add that language in there, what would be accommodating to Verizon. That would be my recommendation.
Yes, sir. From my limited experiences, they have landman, like Jeff, go out and try to secure as many pieces of infrastructure they can attach their stuff to, and then by the time they actually mobilize the equipment folks, it could take some time. But we don't want to sit on this forever, right?
Right, that was my only point made. Gentlemen, I've read it all twice, and I think that the rate that they're proposing is good. I think that everything else has been worked out and the agreement is good. I'm still not comfortable with Verizon holding their feet firm on 2% per year escalation when AT&T is paying 3% right now.
Is there
So that's
any,
the only standard that we have, is we have a current agreement that somebody else is paying a 3% increase per year.
Is there any reason we can't review this every year?
This is a 20-year plus agreement. And there are termination agreements, but not for that. So it's pretty.
Yeah, right. That's well put. There are other things that we could address once we get started, but price won't be one of them.
My recommendation would be to direct Mr. Galvan, say that this board does not agree to 2%. We're agreeing with everything else, we agree with some minor changes, but we just don't agree to 2%, that we want 3% as our other agreements. And it's horse trading time now, folks.
That's your motion?
Would that be a motion or recommendation?
Well, right.
We
right
can't
now-
approve it. It's
right
asking,
now-
the motion is to approve. I'm not suggesting to approve it. Or we can prove it subject to the changes I've outlined and a 3% rate increase.
Correct.
That
Which
would be
means
my
if they don't
motion.
come back with 3%, then we would have to come back.
Okay, we got
But yeah.
nothing but time. Bunch of money.
And the way, consider and remove from the table, consider and discuss for approval, that is written in a way that you can just make a motion to instruct him 3% or nothing.
I can make a motion to approve, subject to the
can do
things
that.
we discussed, and include in the 3% rate increase.
Right.
I'll second.
A motion made by D. Wells and seconded by Mr. Houston. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
For the record, Mr. Wells.
Not in the 20-year
Mr. R. Wells abstains. The motion doesn't
I'll be
pass.
long gone then. I don't want to stick somebody else with the deal.
Moving on to item number 14, consider and remove from the table the following item tabled at a regular meeting on October 11th. Consider and approve the purchase of encode module for inventory.
Move to approve.
Motion made by D. Wells,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item number 15, consider and approve the purchase of encode module for the inventory control.
I'd like to recommend that the board reject this one, and we'll pass it on to our purchasing agent, and he will bring it up at the next board meeting. So you all just reject this one?
That's my motion.
Motion made by D. Wells,
Second?
seconded by
To
Mr.
reject.
Avalos. Yes, for.
And direct staff to go as the outline.
Are all those in favor?
Aye.
There aren't any opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 16, consider a move from the table the following item tabled at the regular meeting on October 11th. Consider and approve the purchase of one laptop for the beacon system.
So moved.
Motion made by D. Wells,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
They are. Are there any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 17, consider and approve the purchase of, item 18, consider and discuss the meeting with Long Island Village.
I think you missed 17.
17, excuse me, consider and approve the purchase of one laptop for the beacon system.
And I'd like to make a recommendation also to reject this one, and we'll pass it on to purchasing agent to review and bring it back at the next agenda.
That's my motion.
Motion made by D. Wells,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
They are. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 18, consider and discuss the meeting with Long Island held on October 13, 2017.
Yeah, we had that meeting to just essentially kick off a discussion between both Doyle and Herb Houston attended the meeting, and I just kind of wanted to give it more of a brief opening, just maybe give a chance for more of the board members to give their opinion of what transpired at the meeting.
Yes.
I don't know if you wanted to address any comments from there.
I'll jump in here. It was pretty well attended by Long Island Village and staff. And there was a lot of input. Essentially, it was agreed that staff would be looking to assist Long Island Village in identifying any potential leaks and giving me other suggestions. There was discussion about working on with the getting upgrading the lift stations, if we can get it into the bond issue.
Yeah, right, and as far as
That's your wheelhouse there, Charles.
Yeah, and I followed up with bond counsel after that meeting, and the fact that we approved the engineer's report, which turned around and approved the election order, that's a document that's set in stone. It can't be changed at this time. And so all we can look at this point is the contingencies that were within that dollar amount. You know, if there's savings or projects are identified where we can apply that contingency to those lift stations, I mean, that's within the board's discretion.
So we can do it.
Yes.
And do you have anything to add? What did you come away with?
No, nothing really. I guess when it comes down to our lift stations, we would love to have you guys take those over and take care of the maintenance of them and that type of thing. That certainly would help us out with our problem that we have with our cost on our water, you know, so when we go over 1 million gallons. Because that's our biggest problem is, you know, we have to buy 4 million gallons a month. It's, because that's basically our 4,000 gallons per unit.
Yeah,
And our problem is we need the 6-inch meter for our flow, for our fire hydrants, for safety. But when we have the 6-inch meter, most of our water goes through there. We also have 2 more 4-inch meters, but I think most of the pressure is coming through the 6-inch meters, or through the 1 6-inch meter. And then, of course, what that does is it causes us to have 2 million gallons that are at the highest rate, because we're going over that. And that's where we kind of talked about, maybe we could get just a flat rate for our water use. I mean, we're already trying to, I know your rates are for, you're trying to conserve water, and that's where, this is what we told before, is once we go past, 1 million gallons, the price of the water goes way up. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because the more water you sell, the more water you make. I mean, the more money you can make off of it. That is in any other type of thing. We are in the process of, and of course, part of the other thing was we were wanting to see if we could get into, with the Texas Water Commission, for low-interest loans, so we can change our water system and our sewer system. And then hopefully, probably, when we get it up to your specs, roll it over to Regularmeeting to take over at that point.
There's several things involved with this. It's, our largest customer, but at the same time, there's a lot of issues with it. And the issue is, one of the issues is that, we meter it in, but then they don't have a metering system to fairly distribute share the cost with all the units on place. There's other issues that would have to be addressed, and the easements have been built over, and if there was ever any discussion about putting new lines in, it's got to be really addressed of where they could be put. It's going to take a lot of engineering to do that. We also have the question that didn't come up in that meeting is that that's lease ground. And so a legal question we're going to have to go with is, what can be done on leased ground? And so that's something the board needs to address if we're going to continue with this. I certainly am willing to continue working diligently on working with this, and Long Island Village is willing to step up, and they're already putting in some savings account and starting to work where they can take and meet their...
Lease land from navigation or lease land from Freelander or Freeland?
Freeland leased it from the navigation district.
No, right now, there is no lease agreements in it. This is all individually owned, and all of our...
You have fee title to each of those lots from the navigation district?
No, we have easements at outdoor resorts in the cabinets upstairs. I can look at the terms on how we acquired them.
They say there might be 1 or 2 lots out there, but we don't know of any of them that are still under that lease agreement.
We would still have to do a document, or a title search associated with that.
Well, I can promise you, all of our common areas, where the water lines and where our easements are, that is all wholly owned by Long Island Village, Homeowners Association.
And you guys' lots, though, are fee simple, I mean, they're not.
Yes, it is all right. So we have the easements in place. We also have the engineering in place. We've already done our surveys. We've already had some engineering studies and cost estimates put together for this. Our next thing, and then plus, in this past year, we did put into our declarations where we have to put away 12% of our monthly dues that we bring in, or of our budget goes towards this type of a thing, towards infrastructure. We do need to get our infrastructure changed because this was an RV park back in the 80s, but what happened is they started building houses. And we now have our declarations have been changed, so everything is legal. And, we can build houses in there and everything. We are working with AEP right now too. They've actually already started doing some of the preliminary work of getting our electric lines put in correctly. But we want to put our electric lines, our water and sewer lines, all in at the same time, because we will be tearing up the streets and putting them in the streets.
They be in Long Island Village.
Long Island Village.
Okay, and you're trying to do underground, or what are you, do above ground on the...
No, everything would be underground.
I would, to kind of move along here, I would commit my time to continue to work with y'all to do this, and I know staff is willing to do that. Let's just kind of keep working. It was a good roundtable discussion last time, and I think we continue with that. We can take and benefit everybody in the district.
I think we need to furnish to you the engineering that we've already done so that you can see.
I think we may have already seen that, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Arver has a copy, and they've taken a look at it. But like, for example, if as far as the cycle to sort of, keep this potential rolling, I mean, like by March, we could submit a project information form that could turn into an invitation to apply for funding assistance next year, if we choose to.
And then we need you and the legal to come back and say how that works for, obligation for the district. And so these are the things that we need to discuss. I call it a cosign. And so, there's got to be some way that, the district can be assured of those payments being made and have some guarantees in there. So, at some point, we're going to need to get legal in there, but for right now, get over those engineering plans and see where we are.
Yeah. Hey, TCEQ, whenever they make low-interest loans, have a lot of oversight over the assets that they are investing in, and those assets are collateral. And so any divestment of those assets or change in operations or management of those assets will get their attention. So, doesn't mean it can't be done, just means that we have to, like you said, be careful on how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Mireya is the head of our region, and she can provide us a lot of feedback on how to do that.
So Charles, if you'd... Okay.
I did a lot of listening the other day, there were some issues with rates because of how it affects your monthly bill. But they've also put a lot of time and effort into coming up with a plan to revamp all their improvements out there. As I remember, it's like $5 million, more or less, approximate.
Seven.
What, 7? A lot of money. And I asked the question, I said, are you interested, are you looking for rate relief, or are you looking for help in getting these improvements done? And they're more interested in getting the improvements done with our help. As Charles points out, there's ability to surcharge their water bills if they were annexed into the district to pay for things like that. So they're not asking for any freebies. They're just asking for some assistance in getting a better rate at making the infrastructure improvements that they want to take forward for the next 50 years. So I applaud them for, realizing they're not looking for any handouts. They're just looking for, like Dewalt said, maybe a good co-signer from the bank to get the best rate they can possibly get to go forward with the improvement
Co-signer
project.
being the water district?
Yeah. Through the
Well,
TCEQ.
we have to apply for a
Right.
grant. If they would apply for a grant, it would be through the district.
We had talked to TCEQ about this, or TCW, whatever it is, and of course, once they found out that we are not the actual supplier of the water, then all of a sudden, because we're just buying it from you and putting it through. So that's when it came down to, okay, first it was, yeah, we can work with you, no problem. But then, of course, we would have to become a water district ourselves, and we don't want to get into that.
Right, we're the only ones with the authority to make the
Right.
request.
And so after we got into that, that's when I came over and talked to your staff here about this, and they thought, well, especially since I guess the biggest thing is, I don't know, you had talked about something about we need to show that this is a unmetered 1,024 unit subdivision. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just because right now we
Charles
were,
can tell you better.
yeah, if we were, because we don't report the units on that meter in terms of our number of connections. And if we would maybe take the approach of green infrastructure, saying it's a first-time meter service for the 1,034
Kind of like
connections.
a Colonia type assistance program, I guess, not.
Yeah,
a
well,
Colonia,
yeah,
but subdivision.
It would fall under green infrastructure. We
kinda
wouldn't have to
how
do
you-
the socioeconomic surveys or disadvantaged business,
Yeah.
it would just be strictly a green infrastructure request.
Okay, can we wrap this up? Go ahead and get with Garver, get the engineering they gave to that, get some, get us a game plan from there. And then as we get along the lines, to get legal involved to research everything, and let's just keep moving this forward. That's my recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know everyone's putting time and effort
Looking
into
forward to
this.
working with you guys.
Thank you, likewise. Let's move on to item number 19. Consider and approve waiving the annexation fees for the town of Laguna Vista for development of South Texas Ecotourism Center. This is a nonprofit that we want to put in, right? It's a city-run building, is kind of
The way I understand it, on the 23 acres, and you see what's proposed to be constructed, it's going to be a partnership between the city, Cameron County, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And basically, it's to serve as a visitor center for the Bahia Grande complex back there. And Rick and I met, and it's certainly not a for-profit enterprise, and I think we felt comfortable with waiving the annexation fees for this particular type of project.
Where do they plan to start?
You know how it is with government.
I would just want to make sure that we're okay with our policies to be able to do this. And I don't have objection with it. I would like, if we did an agreement of any waiving of fees, I would recommend that we only did it to the portion that's outlined here in our exhibit, the 10+ acres. But really, and it's a legal question, it really comes into who are we dealing with here? It's owned by the city of Laguna Vista right now, but they're entering into an agreement with Cameron County and U.S. Fish and Wildlife and all that, but I don't know that agreement's in place yet. So at some point, we need to know, that one, I don't have a problem doing this agreement with the city of Laguna Vista, but we need to make sure that whatever agreement it does is contingent upon the stated use would be maintained. And it would only be for the 10 acres or whatever they've outlined here, and not for the whole thing, because they may decide to put a hotel over there or a non-public use. So there should be some caveat or something there.
It restricts it, it's basically just a restriction.
Yeah, something in there that,
And remember, you do set a precedence. I mean, I'm in favor of this too, but you do set a precedence for other nonprofits or other public entities or things that come forward, so you do have to keep that in mind for consideration.
Yeah. So there's grant money involved here, somebody's getting paid for something. So I don't know if Laguna Vista really needs to say, hey, we're bringing forward the land, and with that we have, water and sewer and utilities available for it as their contribution for the project. I salute that. But somewhere in there that, protects the district that.
Right, I mean, you won't set yourself up necessarily for having to approve any nonprofit that comes to you wanting their annexation fees waived. Because not all profits do God's work, or do public service work. A nonprofit just means they have a tax exemption. Doesn't mean that they're, doing good civic. Yeah, I mean,
we can pick
there
and
could
choose
be
our
bad
nonprofits.
nonprofits, right? That the district completely disagrees with their purpose for existing. So you won't create a precedent necessarily that's going to bind you to do this in every case. It's an application. Do we have an application for waiver of annexation fees? Because I don't think that happens very often, right? But you could create an application, and then it's strictly at the will of the board.
What about some sort of a agreement or a document of intent that the district will do if Laguna Vista and county or everybody else ponies up their side of it?
Absolutely, those are done all the time.
And so it's really not necessarily a blanket waiving of annexation fees, but yet
contingent upon these milestones.
These are the things getting done.
You can do that.
And can we annex a parcel of that only?
They have to pay the fees to do that.
Now
We can divide it up, I mean.
Yeah, you could go by the meets and bounds description on the just 10 acres or so, the 23, and just waive it for that particular
And does it
parcel.
make sense to do that?
So annexation law is complicated. I've normally dealt with it as a city attorney. How that translates into a water district, I would have to look at the water code, because there may be caveats that I just don't have at the forefront of my mind right now. But, you can't piecemeal annex, you can't strip annex, you can't annex things out in an island. So you're correct, you can limit the territory you're annexing, but it has to be contiguous.
Do we need to get in that, or just be agreement of intent of waiving the fees when everything else
Subject to
not necessarily
compliance with all.
Not necessarily now a waiving of annexing fees, but a commitment to the district to participate.
Yeah. I just need to make sure, because you bring up that we're not annexing the whole property. Is this property
Well, we
attached
could.
to our boundary line?
We could.
Across the street.
It's across the street.
Yeah, it's
So we
adjacent
should be
to our-
okay.
Yeah,
It's not like we're doing.
You could, subject to the intended purpose of the annexation. You could be the whole 23.
Okay, yeah. What I'm saying is, I just want to make sure that, let's say the whole property as a whole is contiguous, but based on that they're only going to use the back half for the purpose of which we support, can we just annex the back half and not the whole property?
That's one question.
That's one question.
Or the second question is, if we annex the whole property, ultimately, that is further defined as to what the use is. If it's the nonprofit approved by the district, that could be waived. And if it's another use that the district doesn't waive, then that is not.
At such time when this property is ceased to use, blah, blah, blah.
So we can waive it as long as it's a nonprofit.
Do you have a question?
what is the fee?
There's a, that,
It's based on the density development. It's like water rights, which is the right to, divert water off the river, and then you have to buy into our treatment and sewer plants.
it's not just land.
It's not set in stone, because, I mean,
That study hasn't been done,
Right.
that has not been determined. It's, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
based on the density of the project, how much they're gonna consume, how large the area is, and then the water consumption is calculated into acre feet. That has a number that they would have to buy the water rights normally, and then buy into the infrastructure of the district, not counting putting their own infrastructure into the project.
So there's no way to ballpark it at all?
Well, somebody would have to do an engineer's report based on this development, and then that's when we would have that cost known.
Not hedging it, it's just not able to be determined right now, because that study hasn't been presented. So if we're going the right track, if I understand, we're just gonna take, and the district is willing to enter into an agreement with Laguna Vista along those lines.
To give them the preliminary.
Yeah, and then at that time, there would be a dollar amount that would be,
It's real easy, but also complicated. If you talk about annexing a piece of property for residential development, you know you're going to have so many houses. Well, okay, that's easy, but are the houses 5-bedroom or are they 2-bedroom? So you figure out the number of residences, the approximate usage of water. I mean, swimming pool, there are a lot of things that go into it. And Charles has this funky formula. He'll come up with, an outrageous sum that you got to pay. But that's life, A developer
Yeah.
has to pay what he has to pay. And that's how annexation typically occurs. This will be different because you don't have a bunch of homes. You're going to have an amphitheater and some other outbuildings, but
so many bathrooms, so many taps.
they'll come up with something.
Yeah, like just a ballpark, like maybe a 200 acre development. It's, a reasonable annexation fee would be 500,000, but we're not dealing with anything like that here. So it's just a small development.
That's a residential.
Yeah, it's just,
transaction.
I don't have a real number. It's just something, I mean, these costs could become very significant.
And you could have a 10-acre piece of property, but it could be 30 stories high.
Equivalent to one house.
Right.
Equivalent to one house, so that use could only be $1,000, $1,500 annexation. And I'm throwing a number I'm not qualified to give.
Let's keep on trucking.
Okay.
We got long, we're not even halfway.
Well, can we go ahead and make a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we go ahead and make a motion to waive the fee on this particular 10-acre meets and bounds description of property, with the caveat that this property be used for the intended uses as presented to us between, with the county and Fish and Wildlife, something worded that way.
And have legal go ahead and draft that agreement.
Sure.
Or some guidelines that will cover us, that if they don't meet their side of it, we're
It
out.
reverts back, reverts back to open.
Or they lose the waiver. They lose the waiver.
Motion made by Mr. Houston.
Second? Never mind.
Seconded by
Rick
all
Wills.
those, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carries, thank you. Moving on to item 20, consider and approve travel for the Board of Directors to attend the 2018 Association of Water Board of Directors AWBD Mid-Conference in Dallas on January 26, 2018 through January 27, 2018. This is, I put that on there because I enjoy going to these.
Yes, Mr. Chairman
Conference Board
requested this
Directors.
for his approval, but I want to ask the whole board if anybody else wants to attend so we can register and do it now.
I can attend, but I appreciate the offer.
It's right around my birthday. It's right around my birthday.
Oh,
There you go.
Put me
Sign
on
up.
there.
there you go.
Sign
It's
up.
good to go.
Yeah.
You learn quite a few. Yes.
Learn board techniques and practices.
Rick?
And it's-
No, not much, since in the hunting season.
Okay. You got it? Okey-dokey, we'll register all three of you. And
Well, you have to get an
we'll give you more information as we go along.
It's a consider and approve.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Motion for approval by D. Wells,
Second.
seconded by Gonzalez. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
There are none opposed, thank you. Moving to item 21, consider and approve geotechnical engineering services for proposed sludge holding tanks at Port Isabel wastewater treatment plant.
All right, yes, so this is a request to get some additional geotechnical work done to be able to get a better price on our sludge holding tanks, rather than, having a competitive bid with this information being unknown. So, I recommend approval for this additional work on the amount of, what is it, 12,000, I believe? $12,800. I don't know if there's any other comments. It was just, I don't know if you saw that.
How much are we gonna save by doing this?
Oh, well, basically, it'll tighten up the numbers for when the structural design comes up for the foundation. I mean, it'll be a big number in savings in terms of having that.
Couldn't be or will be.
It will be.
Then we ought to do it.
I've got questions in here.
Yes, go ahead.
Charles,
Yes.
the questions I have, or some concerns would be, is that we're discussing another contract with the same company that we ended up with that huge
Dispute.
change order.
Right.
And we can have that conversation some more later. And then I see that your item agenda, and you're referencing 2 sludge holding tanks, and you're designing this for drilling test holes for 2 sludge holding tanks.
Right.
And we never agreed to 2 sludge holding tanks. I don't
I think
disagree,
that's,
let me finish. I don't disagree that it's probably prudent to get the data now. If you're out there drilling, go ahead and drill the 3rd hole to look at that. But I'm as interested to find out for sure. Everything that I've heard is that there's still question is why the foundation on the grit processing plant was so humongous. Why we, the specs, one person says we could have gotten along with just a floating slab. The other said we could have had, pilings put underneath there to support it. But is it overkill? I don't want anything sinking, but at the same time, I'm hearing conflicting information. Our engineers, Corolla, aren't stepping up and really saying one way or the other. They're leaving it in here in the contract proposal to leave it up to the contractor to say
Right.
what they need. And that's like telling somebody to build me a house and say, build me a house with 1 or 4 bedrooms. Your
Right.
choice.
Right, and I think to try to, have somebody lower their contract after the fact versus knowing the information up front and then you have the contract known on a competitive basis.
And I get that here, and I don't have any problem with,
Yeah.
doing the testing for 2 tanks that will ultimately be used in the future, and I'm assuming that data is good. But I do question that we're using the same company that,
Right, well, in this case, the same company would be PSI, because PSI, we have a contract directly with them for the geotech, and the question I did ask Corolla was the quality of their work, and they felt that there was no issues with the quality of geotech.
I don't have the confidence in Corolla.
Right, and
I'll
I mean,
say it again.
PSI is used all the time. I mean, basically, our second option would be Robert Kister and McAllen, if we want to have somebody else
I don't have a
run
problem
it.
with that. And I'll make one final comment in here, and that's when you're saying, like in the 3rd paragraph, so you say the district request to proceed. I would say if you want to say the district engineer,
Well,
because the district is all encompassing, including me, and I don't recommend. Just a little fact
yeah,
point.
whenever I'm
okay?
asking for something, I usually use the word staff. But yeah, I could be more
Staff
specific.
or district engineer, own it. You ask for it, own it.
Right.
You ain't asking and giving me recommendation. You're asking for my recommendation. I don't have a problem as long as we're going to do the work, planning for 2 tanks. But right now, my mind is not accepting 2 tanks. We can't even afford 1 tank.
Right, and the plan
And
said.
that's another question. Until we get this bond election, I ask if we're spending this money prematurely.
And that was sort of my reason, if you notice that this is dated September 12th for taking it this long to bring it up. And mainly, the reason why I decided to go ahead and bring it as an action item is the fact that we need the sludge holding tank one way or the other.
Well, we're going to have to do it through the bond. If we don't do it through the bond, we're going to have to take and do something else.
Exactly.
So we got trapped in that corner that we have to have the sludge holding tank.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Yes.
If we do this, if and when we get to build the other tank, the other sludge tank,
Mhm.
is this report going to still be valid?
Yes.
For how long?
Once the soil condition's known, it's not going to change. So,
Right, there's no time limit on it,
Okay.
unless the earth shifts. Move to approve.
Motion for
I'll
approval by
second.
D. Wells.
Discussion, one other item real quick. I have a problem with giving your contractor the leeway to obtain his own structural engineering. The structural engineering should come at your behest, not the contractors, because I'll tell you, if you give it to the contractor, he's going to get an engineer that's going to over-engineer it because they get paid on a percentage, and they just see it as, more concrete the merrier.
yeah.
So your engineering contract should be at your direction, not Corilla's.
Correct. Basically, to get this bid set final, I would basically take this geotech and insert it as an additional spec to what Corolla's already completed. And then the thing is, as far as what's going to regulate that control on over-design on structural, is the fact that contractors are doing a competitive basis for that bid. So it's in their best interest to get below.
So we need to recap. We had a motion for approval by D. Wells, and a second by
Me.
Mr. Avalos. For all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving to item 22, consider and review expenditures for October 1st through the 15th.
I'd like to mention that I'm glad it says review expenditures and not approve expenses.
Interest of time, move to approve.
Motion for approval by D. Wells.
Second.
Seconded by, I don't know who it was, Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
They are. None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 23, executive session permitted by the Open Meetings Act, VTCA, Government Code Section 551001, head sequence under Section 551071, consultation with attorney, Section 551074, A1, authorizing certain deliberations about officers and employees of the district to be held in executive session. Item A, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, retirement duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to the general manager. Item B, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, retirement duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to a district engineer. Item C, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to a director of finance. Item D, discussion in legal matters considering 6900 Pottery Boulevard through 7200 Pottery Boulevard. Motion go into executive session at 7:28 p.m. with a 5-minute recess for resume. So motion made by D. Wells, seconded by Mr. Avalos. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Motion to come out of executive session at 8:03 p.m.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Houston.
Second.
Seconded by R. Wells. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
We are out of executive session. Item A, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to a general manager. No action. Item B, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of employees to wit district engineer. No action. Item C, to deliberate the appointment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of district employees to wit director of finance. We will proceed as directed with counsel. Item D, discussion on legal matters with counsel concerning 6900 Pottery Boulevard, 7200 Pottery Boulevard will proceed as legal counsel. Meeting is adjourned at 8:04 p.m.